There are a lot of people in the academic world that try to tell you what you need to know about your retirement. Now, the reality is we are all unique. We're all made differently, and we all need to look at our finances in a different way. The one part where we're all very similar is retirement, or separating from the workforce happily, successfully, is not about replacing your income. It is about replacing your standard of living. We're going to talk about that on Consider This program today. Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Jamie Burton.
And we are so happy to have you along, Jamie. She is a Purdue grad with a degree in financial planning, one of our senior advisors up in our Lafayette office, and she is going to kick us off today with the biggest concept you probably have to have as you think about preparing for retirement. Now, there's some that really matter when you get to retirement, but this is one of the biggest. We're going to talk about the difference between standard of living and current income. Now, Jamie, why are those two topics so important?
Well, we know that in our industry, when a lot of people talk about getting to retirement and how much money you're going to need in retirement, people throw out the number, you're going to need 70% of your current income in order to retire and live the life you want to live. What we know is that that's just simply not true. What you have to do is figure out what your standard of living is and be able to replace that number. So when we hear people talking about the 70%, push that to the side. We need to figure out what does it take you to live month to month all the time. So what we also know is that there are different kind of expenses that you have and you're going to continue have going forward. We have expenses that are fixed. Those are expenses that you're going to continue to have no matter what. You can think of those as your utility bills, your mortgage, your cell phone bills, your TV, things like that. Those are expenses that are not going to go away, and you're going to have to continue paying those through retirement. Then you're also going to have what are called social expenses. So are you going to plan to go out to eat a lot? Do you want to travel when you're in retirement? Do you want to be spoiling your grandkids and have some extra income for that? So we know that those expenses are most likely going to be higher when you first retire and then kind of taper off over time. So those are the two different kind of expenses that we know that we're going to have to replace for you when you get to retirement.
Now, some people are going to take exception with one of the things you said about a mortgage not disappearing and calling it a fixed expense.
Sure.
Here's what I've always said, and when I taught at Purdue, is people do not understand carry cost. Right? The check that you write to the bank after you've owned a house for 20 years is typically less than the cost that it takes to maintain that house over the course of a month. And so I think one of the mistakes people make when they look at that long-term budget is they forget what carry costs really are. You may mow your yard today or cut your grass, depending on where you are in the country. You may do a lot of that yourself, handyman, as we go. But as we age, typically we have other people who begin to do those and provide those services for us. And that is certainly one of the areas we're seeing the inflationary pressure. Mm-hmm. But that nasty textbook that you had when I got to Purdue that they wanted me to teach out of, the $240 that they wanted you to spend for this book, clearly said people need 70% of their retirement income, of their pre-retirement income, to be able to maintain their standard of living. What they left out is that the median income at that point in time was $37,000, I think it was, 30. So they're writing to people who have $38,000 a year of joint income. That's the way academics think. They were not writing to those of you who are up at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday listening to this or taking the time to listen to a podcast. Right? You care more about your money. Odds are you have more resources than most of them, and we have to think about us being unique. All right, so we talked about standard of living. We talked about the other. What's next, Jen?
So when we meet with our families and they are deciding if they are ready to retire or not, and they're trying to figure out, what am I going to need in retirement? How am I going to figure this out? Like, I don't typically live month to month on a budget. So how am I going to do that once I get to retirement? So things that we talk about with our family is to run a practice retirement year. So try and set a budget for what you think you might be living off of in retirement, and then actually stick to it. See if that number actually makes sense for you. So, and then do it over the course of a year. So once you do get to the point that you are ready to retire, you're going to have confidence in the amount of money that you need from month to month. And we can put together a good plan of how to get those assets to you in the most tax efficient way.
One of the things you'll hear from generals if you study military history is that no war was ever won without a battle plan, and no battle plan ever made it to the field. Right? So when you have that retirement practice year, what you're really doing is walking through an exercise of planning. And it's, I will tell you, Jamie, we've learned over this is my 33rd year in the industry, what happens when you look at most people's retirement budget in central Indiana. 60% of it is either fixed or social, with the 40% being the other, right? So some of us live a life where we want to stay at home more. We want to garden, go watch our grandkids play soccer, right? There's less social expenses to that than people who want to go to Italy or go around there. But you said this earlier, and what we know is that nationally, discretionary income, that's what we would call social, peaks at age 65. In our practice, it's always been 68. And we're waiting to see with the numbers from COVID whether or not that changed, whether we got a year extended or a year subtracted. I will tell you that, as of now, the reopening stocks seem to think that people are ready to go travel, ready to go back. All right, what's next, Jamie?
Yeah, so when we are looking at helping people retire, we want to make sure that we go over our 5 critical elements. So the first one being your life after work. That's where we decide, hey, are you going to plan on doing some traveling? Are you going to work part-time and have some sort of income? So we really want to know what their vision is for once they are in retirement and the things that they're going to do. Then we move on to tax planning. So we really look at the assets that people have already saved up and looking at the things that they want to do in retirement. Are the assets they have saved the most tax efficient for what they want to do? Or do we need to do some tax planning today, maybe do some Roth conversions, get some of that tax deferred money out of those accounts and into the Roth accounts so that once they do get to retirement, they can live that life they want to live and be able to do it in the most tax efficient way possible.
Yeah, what we've seen, year after year, is that the failure to build tax diversification has oftentimes disrupted financial planning more than not even saving enough. You need to have options about where you want to pull money out at particular times. When you look at that U.S. tax code, you start out at a 10% marginal bracket, and then the 12, which will go again to 15, and then it goes all the way to 22%. So, I mean, you're almost looking at a doubling, ladies and gentlemen. And the difference between having a successful retirement many times is navigating and managing those tax brackets. And so Jamie and the team will sit down with you at a Next Steps meeting. It's a 90-minute complimentary meeting that you can get going to yourlifeafterwork.com or simply calling 800-928-4001. She will sit through and walk you through individually over 90 minutes each of these 5 critical elements so that you can have a better handle, if you will, on where you are now and where you need to go into the future. So you gave us your life after work. You gave us tax plan. What's next?
Yep. So next is the investment playbook. So we want to make sure that the assets that you have invested, whatever assets you have, it makes sense for the life that you are going to be living and the income that you're going to be drawing once you get to retirement. We need to sit down and make sure that, hey, if you need to draw 4% of your assets to be able to live the life you want to live, are your assets invested properly to be able to make enough to be able to keep up with that 4% withdrawal and not be running out of money while you're in retirement? It's a bad scenario if you want to live the life you want to live, but you don't have the assets saved up. So we have to make sure that the way that it's invested makes sense for the life that you're getting ready to live.
And I think what's worse is when you've done the heavy lifting, right? You said no to going to Disney, said no to new cars, said no to bigger houses, and then messed up the investment part. And that's what we see happen. People try so hard to get this right, but we end up focusing on the one area that we understand, whether that's how to invest in the stocks or whether that's the tax plan. Just because you understand one does not mean you understand the other. And if you miss either one, you can be in trouble. We watch people, consistently pay excess fees and expenses that they didn't know they were paying for no reason. And I could go on, but I want you to finish those 5 critical elements. So your life after work, the annual tax plan, the investment playbook, and then what?
And then we have life happens. So we've talked about how you want to live in retirement and the income that you're going to need when you get there. But what could go wrong? And how can we protect against what could go wrong for that plan for your retirement?
It's the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yep.
And what's happened is, at 54 and doing this for 30-some years now, I've seen a lot of things happen to a lot of people, and so we made the decision just to build checklist. And I would encourage you to go to yourlifeafterwork.com or call 800-928-4001 to get this checklist, the 7 things that you should be considering before retiring. And what's the last one?
Yep. The last one there is the legacy planning. So we want to make sure that after you live that life you want to live in retirement, we are leaving the assets in the correct way to the right places and the right people for your wishes. So we want to make sure all that's set up correctly.
Not the IRS. And as one of my friends would say, not the future ex-son-in-law. Yep. Notice future ex-son-in-law. I'm never going to forget. My buddy introduced him to me as this is my future ex-son-in-law.
Wow.
And said they were not having a good day. A bad day at the golf course.
I'd say.
Folks, seriously, we want to help you work on your financial vision, help you go through those 5 critical elements, make sure that you are prepared, that the hard work, the discipline that you're showing today actually pays off in the long term. Go to yourlifeafterwork.com. or call 1-800-928-4001. Get signed up for your Next Steps meeting. We will give you things to consider today, things you're going to want to consider in the future. And if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you, and we'll put it in writing. It's not for everybody. We get that. We understand that. But let's make sure that your hard work is getting you in the right direction. Do not miss the concept of tax diversification. That's you having the ability to take money from different sources at different times. 800-928-4001, yourlifeafterwork.com.